Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 9 of the podcast.
Went into the underground shelter for the first time, this morning at like 5 a.m. Loud explosions in the sky,
The first one is, why do men enter into their cave and how to deal with it?
Yeah, I think this topic is extremely important.
When you're into something, when you're in flow, whether it's work, whether it's a project, whether something is on your mind, you're super zoned in onto this thing, and you might be there physically, but mentally you're checked out, so then you've gone into that cave.
And I've seen a lot of people, I'm like, dude, how did you enter there? Because they really wanted to figure it out by themselves, but they could also not escape it.
When is the right time, to ask for help? You have to try to help yourself and, read everything that you can. And, reach out to people who you actually trust to share what you're going through if you don't find the light at the end of the tunnel.
Caveman brain, cavewoman brain is like, I need a man to protect me because I am not as physically strong. I wasn't biologically built in a way that I can protect myself as a man can, because I have the ability to get pregnant and then I have offspring which I need to defend as well, right?
Beautiful thing is when you read through history and you see all the men who conquered and went into war, really look which woman was behind them. I really think it is the intuition of that woman that really were there, and the support and the guidance.
I think a lot of the men need that kind of brotherhood or men around them who they can speak with, and that's why we are doing this, right? Like, that was the whole agenda and vision for us to actually bring this awareness, because a lot of the people don't have that awareness. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 9 of the podcast. I don't know, like, I've lost track of numbers, but we are really enjoying these conversations. How are you guys? How are you, Ali, Neil?
Yeah, man, all good. Getting ready to leave Ukraine soon. Now I'm feeling the events of war because I went into the underground shelter for the first time. Alarms sounding in the morning, like even that was last week, and then this morning at like 5 a.m. loud explosions in the sky.
Oh my God.
So it's insane. Like now I'm proper feeling that okay, this country is at war. Even right now there's no electricity. I do have Wi-Fi, but there's limited power because they were attacking like the power plant facilities and stuff. So yeah, man, looking forward to leaving here pretty soon. Just sorting out a few administrative stuff and everything, getting documents and everything for my kid and all that. And then yeah, life is good. Otherwise, I'm alive. Is good, and
Shit,
looking
man,
forward to getting out of here soon.
I hope all stay safe. I've seen your story and I was like, man, I wish nobody has to see that ever in their
Yeah,
lives. It's crazy.
it's not fun, especially when you have a little kid.
Yes, man. How about you, Ali? Where are you?
I'm back in Denmark,
Okay.
enjoying the good weather and waiting for this beautiful podcast to start.
That's amazing. So, do you know the topic for today?
Well, after asking 10 times about that next topic of today, the first one is, why do men enter into their cave and how to deal with it? And then we have something upcoming for the next podcast, which we're not going to cover now because otherwise we're going to burn our cards.
Amazing. Yeah, I think this topic is extremely important, and not only for men but also for women as well, to understand why men actually go to their caves. Okay, like, let's start with Neil. Neil, tell me what does it actually mean, man going to a cave?
So the proverbial cave, it's just like
Yeah.
okay. So I think all men can relate. When you're into something, when you're in flow, whether it's work, whether it's a project, whether something is on your mind, you get into this space where you're zoned in, you're super zoned in onto this thing, and to everyone around you, it may feel like you've gone somewhere, even though you might be there physically, but mentally you're checked out. So then you've gone into that cave, and I think we do all experience it at one point in time. And to those outside, those close to us, it may feel like we're ignoring them or we're selfish, but the reality is we're sometimes so engaged in this thing that we're pursuing or doing or trying to accomplish that it takes us going into this route to get to completion, and it's like full immersion sometimes. So I think just having that understanding that it is normal, we just need to know how to work around it. I think that is the main thing. And Rafi, I know you brought it up on a previous one, like going into the cave and how you were dealing with it in your relationship. So I'm curious to know like how you manage that, because I still struggle with it sometimes. Like I told my partner, like it's Monday to Friday, I'm 100% on. It's just work from morning to night, because I work with clients different time zones, employees different time zones, and it's like from the time I wake up to go to sleep, it's hard to turn off. And it's not that, to me, it's like feels like work all the time, because I enjoy what I do as well. But at the same time, like those around you will kind of suffer when you're in this as well. So I'm curious to know how you manage it. And Ali, of course, he has a similar situation to me with the kids. So I'd like to know like how he manages it as well.
Yeah. Like I think from my side, I am blessed to have a partner who understands. Like one of the biggest things that we have started doing is like before going to bed, we read a lot. And whatever we learn, we share. And I was reading this book, which is, I think you guys must have read it too. It's called Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. I think it's an interesting way to put it, how he has explained how when men go to cave, what do they actually feel. So I think she has learned it, and she realizes that at times, when she wants to talk, and I'm not really responding as eagerly as I used to. So she's like, what's happening? And then I tell her, man, I feel like I'm in the cave because I have so many things going on in my mind, especially when I'm stressed about something, or if I'm trying to solve, anything, anything at work, anything in my life, anything that is going on, which she might know about, but the way she deals with it versus the way I deal with it is completely different. Like I go extremely quiet. And the only thing that I want to do is if I'm having a downtime, I would just want to eat my food and watch something interesting and just zone out.
Yeah.
That is the best thing that I could do at that time. Like I don't want to speak, and if I try to speak, I would not really be there. So for me to deal with it is just to let her know that I'm in this zone right now, and I can't really talk as much as you would like me to, and this is the space that I need. And honestly, I feel like in next morning when I wake up, it's all down. I don't really feel that anymore. And it's just a night's thing. I feel I don't go into cave for days and days and days. I think it's just that one particular night. And then next morning I feel a lot better. And then when I go to work again, I have all of that again. And then by night, I'm again in my cave. I think that happens a lot. I would love to know what your perspective is, Ali.
So when I look into it, I think we need to distance a little bit between cave and just zoning out and having some me time. Because usually when I speak about cave, it's usually a bigger transformation or a bigger incident in your life that you're going through. This is where you sometimes retreat to a cave or a cave mode, that you have something, and it's basically a coping mechanism that I think a lot of men, because we had in a previous podcast where we spoke about that women are able to express their emotion and thereby release the pressure, whereas men sometimes need to get their thinking, their emotions, and so on together, and they need to do it with themselves, and they need to go through that process. And I think most of the time, this is what I relate to when I speak about the cave. I think it's those bigger life moments, and not just, for example, on an everyday basis. Because for me, the everyday basis is more of like a zoning out or having a me time where I can think, reflect, and do all of the other things. So I think that's what I'm usually on. Cave is a bigger thing for me than just a usual thing. And I think reflecting on the whole cave concept, one thing that comes up to me is like, I think there are two type of caves in here. The first type of cave is the one that heals you and make you grow, but we also need to understand that on the back side of the coin, we actually have the dark side, which is the cave can also eat you up. And I think this is the dual thing that we need to be aware of. When entering a cave, you can come out of it, but also I've seen people that enter into the cave and almost they get into full isolation. They leave their family. They leave their, almost like you feel that they distance themselves from everything else. And usually most of the time is when you're getting into depression and you're really getting into some darkness and you're fighting some shadows with yourself. And I think this is one of those, because we had one of the other podcasts where we spoke about men and how the suicide rate is way higher among men. I think it's actually because they enter into that dark cave and they try to fight the darkness by themselves, and they have hardness or a hard time to escape that cave until the moment that it almost eat them up and they only see darkness around them. And I think this is one type of cave that we also need to be aware of because men go through it. And I've seen a lot of people, I'm like, dude, how did you enter there? Because they really wanted to figure it out by themselves, but they could also not escape it. On the other side, a usual cave for me, I don't know, when I was reflecting about it, and like the two people that comes into my mind is the Prophet Moses and the Prophet Muhammad. That both of them actually they got the revelation, they got the the 10 rules of how to behave and how to act, and then Muhammad that actually got the revelation. It also happened in a cave. So I think there are something about men and taking a leap into something much bigger by being in a cave, whether a physical cave in the first scenario or isolation and solitude and being for themselves. That is much needed. And the challenge that we're facing in today is that a lot of us are actually not even spending 5 or 10 minutes with ourselves on a daily basis because we're so distracted. So the cave becomes even way more important. But we also need to distinct which cave are you entering into. And before you get too deep, please make sure that the people around you know what you're getting through, because sometimes you might need a hand that really can pull you out of that darkness.
Yeah, that's super interesting because you went into the dark side of it, you know. I think I was touching on the lighter side, which is like when you're engaged, like in your work, in your passion, in your business, all this kind of stuff. But that for sure is like, yeah, it's, the other side of it because you can go into the dark cave or the light cave, you know. I think, or maybe it's the same cave, but it's just what we do in there would be different, right? Like what pulls us in and what keeps us there maybe.
Yeah.
And Neil, I think you told me something at some point of time. You told me about the whole magic mushroom experience, and I think also heard it from other people. The state that you are in will also define very much the experience you're going to get out of it. And I
Exactly.
think this is somehow the similar thing. Like, what do you inter? I think you need to deal with it, but we also need to acknowledge there are some points where a man. I know we have our pride, we have our honor, we have everything else, but where you need to seek professional help of people that can help you transition or get through the cave. And I think this is where a lot of men just get lost. And I've seen it multiple times with people around me. And honestly, I'm like, dude, I've seen some person. I'm like, dude, I haven't seen you for 1.5 years. I'm like, yeah, I've been fighting in my cave. I'm like, okay. I don't think it's supposed to take that long. And I'm like, dude, it almost ate you up. I think the whole, yeah, it's hard to know when do I need to seek help. This
Hmm.
is very personal, but I don't know what you guys think about it. When should a man seek help? Knowing that I'm like, okay, I'm facing something that might be too big of a challenge for
Well,
me.
as soon as you realize that, right, it's just putting your ego aside. I think that is the most difficult thing to actually seek. And we mentioned this before. We went into this in the previous episodes. What do you think, Rafi?
Yeah, I think so. Like I never thought of a cave as something negative because my connotation to the cave is always like, okay, like there are some things that a man goes through, and he has to have that cave time. But I think Ali has put in a very good point that there are negative sides of each coin. So there is a positive and then there is a negative. But for me, like I always look at cave as something positive, something which is building me up essentially in one way or the other, where I go deeper into my thoughts, my vision, and then I start working on it. And I think that's a man's way of moving forward, where he doesn't have to share each and everything. Like I don't feel like sharing everything that I'm doing, and just because what I want to focus on is, okay, how can I get to a place, to a vision as fast as I can, and what are the steps that I have to take, and this is how I've always taken this cave time, and I've realized that we have those downtimes, and at times, yes, it is positive, and at times it's negative. You're right, Ali. Like it has that negative connotation, especially when we are dealing with something that is troublesome, that is a stress, a bigger stress. Like when I was dealing with my dad's death, it was that time, like I was extremely quiet, but at that time I was not living with my partner. I was back home for at least a month and a half where I was living with my family, but I needed that time to really assess what I'm feeling and how I'm feeling it. I read a book at that time which really helped me come out of that. And I think what you're asking for is, when is the right time to ask for help. You have to try to help yourself and read everything that you can, and reach out to people who you actually trust to share what you're going through. if you don't find the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that is the best way forward. Like, if you can ask for help as fast as you can, great. But for myself, my healing was through me reading, me speaking with a few people, speaking with Eve at that time. She was extremely courageous and she really supported me. But you need those systems in, like I that's what I feel.
So, Rafi, to add to that one, so an idea that comes into my mind is really to have that security system or the people who support around you. And that also gets us back to the same reason why we started this podcast, that you don't need to get through life alone. And I think life can be a big burden on one person's shoulder. But if it's distributed across 3 or 4 shoulders, then it's a total different life that you get through. And I think it's totally fair because I also went through like some hard times where I really wanted to deal with it by myself. But as I always said, like, I would love to have the support by people around me, but it also need to come with a certain permission and a certain trust with the people around me. And then it gets back to the same thing. Like, it's good to get through the cave and the cave experience, but I think it's very important also to know, and because I'm like, let for example, free divers when they get down, so and dude, they're diving free, but we also don't need to. We also need to remember they have 15 people around them that can jump in if anything happens. So give the person their experience, but also have a security system around you that actually can support you to go on. And at the end of it, I'm like, is it cheating? No, man. I'm like, life is tough in itself. You need all the tips and tricks to just get through life. And it gets back to the same one. And why are we doing this? Of building a community of men who can relate,
Yeah.
understand, and support you through this journey, whatever that is. uh, at least I know for myself that it's something that I need in my life. I need that support system so I can progress through life faster than I would have done if I had to figure everything out by myself.
Yeah. And one question that I have from Neil, because I think he mentioned that in the last podcast as well. Like, see, it's always good to have people around you and be able to share, especially with your partner as well. But one thing that you shared, Neil, was you don't have to share everything with your partner. What was that connotation? Can you elaborate that a little bit?
So I think that can be an entire episode by itself. We did mention that before, right? But think about it from this perspective, right? You have your partner, and one of the highest priorities for a woman is her safety and security, right? And that manifests itself in many ways in day-to-day life, in your relationship, all of this. Like, think about it this way, like caveman brain, cavewoman brain is like, I need a man to protect me because I am not as physically strong. I wasn't biologically built in a way that I can protect myself as a man can, because I have the ability to get pregnant and then I have offspring which I need to defend as well, right? So I need someone who's capable to defend, to provide, etc. Because I'm vulnerable. I may be in the situation where I have to produce children, all of this. So fast forward now, today's world, like it's completely different, right? Women can take care of themselves. It's not as dangerous, all of this, depending on where you live. But still, let's say you're a woman and you live in the ghetto, like, from the time you walk out in the streets, like every guy is going to be heckling and calling you out and all of this, so it's not safe. So you would want someone who can keep you safe in that environment, right? That's one example. The other example would be, okay, just in regular life, like, we keep mentioning the earning power of each partner, right? Like, somehow the balance is not there when the woman earns more than the man, and that has that can go many ways, but that is just one thing, showing that, okay, this man can provide, he can protect, he can care for me, and I can feel safe because of this thing. It can be earning potential, right? And that is 100% true, right? Like, if we were to flip the switch and be woman, would we want to be with someone who's there and can provide, can protect us? It's no, right? So what should you not discuss? Where does this all lead to? Anything, and this is my opinion, anything that would compromise her feeling of safety and security. So if you are feeling less of a man, less of a provider, less of a protector, and you're vulnerable, it means that she is vulnerable as well. So you have to know to
Mm.
which extent you would actually share. So, for example, I am an entrepreneur. I have to work with clients, and my businesses goes ebbs and flow, and that is the nature of entrepreneurship. Like one day you feel like, oh, this is great. I'm doing well. Like I can afford to do amazing stuff, and then the next day it's like, oh shit, I might have to eat all of the trash. Like not so bad, but I'm just making a point here. But let's say I do communicate work stuff every day with her because my mind is fluctuating like this every single day because so much happens, right? Imagine what happens for her. It's 10 times more. She's emotional, she's in her feelings, she's in her feminine energy. So that amplifies for her. So at one point in time I did share some stuff, and then I realized like, oh, okay, this may be too much, because then she started getting concerned and worrying, and she's like, yeah, I think we may have to live in the streets next week. I'm like, shit, no, this stuff should not be communicated to her, and that's when I realized. So yeah, I think it comes down to that. Anything that compromises her feeling of safety and security, I think it's important. You channel it elsewhere. Like I would come to you guys or therapists or somewhere else, like, but not to her. Like I think that is important.
Rafi, do you know the best part of the story? He told her, no, no, babe, not in 1 week, in 2 weeks.
My God, but this is like, like this was an epiphany to me. I never thought like that. I always thought that it's fine to share, like everything with your partner. But now that I see it clearly, it was exactly like how my dad was. He never really shared. He probably shared 80% of it, but probably the 20% he never really went, and shared with my mom because of that safety net. And I think it makes total sense.
No,
What
but
do you think, Ali? Go on.
I just want to add something quick, right? Like, it's good to share with your partner and everything, right? But then sometimes you have to think, for you personally, it's good to share, to let it out, but is it the right person? Because, like I said, it amplifies with your woman, and she feels it. You say it, you think it, but she feels it, and that is what is important. I'm curious how Ali manages this because he's been in a relationship longer than both of us.
Bro, can
Yeah.
we take the last 5 seconds and just make them too real? That was very good. No, okay, nice. But listen, I think to that point, I agree very, very much. And honestly, I had to learn it the hard way. I think Fatima is we like almost like one person. And again, we have been married for 10 years. I'm like, we are best friends, we partners. She's like the father and the mother, and my sister. My she almost covered every role that you can imagine. And I figured out she don't want to have all of those roles. That's at least, and I also don't want to have all of the roles that actually for her. But I think really, and we spoke about it very much, especially anything that Neve said it, anything that compromises on her safety, and usually is also very connected to the financial part. Do not discuss it with your partner. Just smile and say everything is covered, and she'll be like, "Yep, I trust this guy." That's it. And shit can be on fire in behind. You don't need to say anything. And I think I learned that one the hard way because most of them like, listen, we're building a family together, we're building a vision together. I cannot just make financial decisions on my behalf. To tell you the truth, most women will actually trust you on the financial part. Even though I know you're building for the family and so on, she's like, dude, just make the decision. I believe that you're going to be making the right decision.
Mm.
However, when you're asking a woman, it's more to tune in, not to her logical sense, but to tune into her intuition. Because I also have time. I'm like, Fatima, how do you feel about this decision? Not what do you think about this decision? Because then you really get guiding questions. And it's
Yes.
extremely powerful, man. Use a
Yes.
woman's intuition, don't use her logic.
Bro, that is super good point because if you look at history, look at the kings and men who are really in power, right? The really important role that the women played um for them was like advisors, like guiding them, asking them, poking them, because we know that women test you, they constantly test you, to see, is he who he says he is, will he live up to that? And it's true. Like I do it still. Like I know how to ask. Like if I have someone who is coming, presenting an opportunity and stuff, she would probe me, ask me, and she really knows, like intuitively, like the kind of questions to ask me that would get me thinking. I'm like, shit, how come I didn't see this? So they pick up on things so differently compared to us because we're full on logic. And sometimes we're just like, on it like this. But yeah, from that intuitive side, that's genius finding there, Ali, because I didn't even piece it together like something like that. I just do it now because I know something good is gonna come out of it.
Dude, the beautiful thing is when you read through history and you see all the men who conquered and went into war, really look which woman was behind them. And when they say behind every great man is a woman, I really think it is the intuition of that woman that really were there and the support and the guidance, because women simply can see something in the future that women cannot see. We might think visionary, but women somehow can tell you if that vision will make sense or don't make sense, because she also can see aspect that we cannot see. And I think that's the part you need to tune into, and that's how we can ask about the future. So I think it's not about what you share and what you share, but it's how you share it and how you phrase it, as Neil, as you said. And I think that's something we can take with us. Number two thing that I would love to put in here, we spoke about what you share with your partner, but I think another point that's really related to that one is we men also need to get our thoughts out and we need to share them. I think it's a human thing. I don't think it's a man woman. All of us, we have the deeper need of sharing, reflecting, and sometimes we need to reflect with something or against something. Which is why, first of all, I think something that people can take away, journaling is a very good way of expressing or taking your mind or decoding your mind and put it on a piece of paper, because I think that's a very good way. And number two, and I still say it, try if you have the circle around you that you believe you can share with, I think that's excellent. If you don't have that one, I think you would need another one, or you need to build your circle of friends to the level that you can start to share that with them. Because the challenge that a lot of men are facing is that if you look at people in the 30s, your closest friends are most likely the one that you actually grew up with back in the 1520s when you were 15 or 20. So you haven't created a new circle. The problem is that circle might not have developed as much as you have developed. And I've seen it sometimes, conversations become very much on the surface. You don't really feel the safety of sharing deeper things with those friends, even though those friends are also your closest friends. So that put you in a corner of, I have things I want to express. Most likely you're a man, you don't see it as a big enough problem to go to a psychologist. You're going to share it with your wife, and those ideas are still up in your mind, and it just becomes a very big burden. And I think that's what a lot of men are going through. I felt it, and I'm speaking with my personal experience. I assume very strongly a lot of men also going through it, and you tell me. But this is a big challenge that we have in today. I think it's very well that you express your ideas and reflect against people, but for God's sake, try to find the right people that you actually can do it with.
Yeah,
Agreed.
and going back to the topic, right? I think a lot of the men need that kind of brotherhood or men around them who they can speak with, and that's why we are doing this, right? Like that was the whole agenda and vision for us to actually bring this awareness, because a lot of the people don't have that awareness, and they might not even have the friends or brothers to actually share whatever they're going through with, because it's always the like how you were sharing, Neil, like it's always men competing with each other. There is this ego war all the time, but you got to trust and you got to lay your guard down, because essentially you do go through shit, and that's life, and it happens. But we also have to realize that life is extremely short, and we have to, it's always about how we look into it. Like how, Ali, you said that you have seen downtimes, Neil has seen downtimes, but essentially you get out of it because you have a vision that it will get better. Otherwise, it's impossible. If you keep that in your head that it will always be bad, there'll be no way in hell you'll come out of it. And there is this surrender part that, Ali, you talked to me about, which where you said that the universe or God is so much bigger than us, and if the universe can take care of everything that is going around us, why wouldn't it take care of me? Why
Mm.
wouldn't God take care of me? And I think that surrender part is important, but you have to be freaking positive, to get into that mindset. And that's where, if you are in a cave which is a darker cave, you have to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Otherwise, it's very impossible, and you will keep getting down and down and down further. With that being said, I do have another question, which is a bit tricky, but let me know if you guys can answer it. So, if you're going through something that you can't really share with your partner, okay, it's one of those things that you just mentioned, right? Like you're going through something which is about safety, you can't really share with your partner, and you are in the cave, and you're in the cave long, like for me, okay, I go into the cave one night and I just pour my heart out and get my shit done, and next morning I feel better. But there are some people who are in the cave for like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It can go longer as well. But is going through that problem which you can't really share with your partner, like what are the few things that you can actually do to make her feel safe, and also tell her that you're not really going apart, growing apart?
So I think communicating, first of all, right? Like explaining that you are battling something. Of course, she's gonna probe, right? Like, what is this thing? All of that. But okay, if you're going so deep in, you need help. You need to talk to your brothers if you have those around you, or see a therapist. Like, there's no shame in it. There's zero shame in it. It's for your own well-being. And there's this neutral person who has spent years going into this field to know how to deal and help you with these things. So seek help, first of all. Communicate with your partner, I would say. And I'm speaking from my own experience. I have had this before. And yeah, just they don't need to know every single detail, and you need to make that clear with them, but tell them that you're working with something around this topic, something that happened, whatever it may be. And I think they would understand. They may not understand immediately, but you need to be open on your steps to dealing with it, so they know there's clarity at the end of the tunnel. So it's not that, oh, he's battling with something and I don't know when it's going to end, and it's going to keep going and it's going to get worse. Like, no, I'm working on this thing and it's going to clear up very soon. I'm already talking to someone and almost there to a resolution, So she just wants to know when she's going to have you back to your regular self. So focus on that side of the communication, When are you back? When are you coming back out of the cave, And you need
Yeah,
to be intentional about it as well. Like I said, work and work on it. And you said, you need to see the light. You need to seek the light. So seeking the light is working, right? Like, don't just stay there and wallow. Like, it's not masculine to be pessimistic and just sit in a place of victim mentality. You have to own up. You have to be optimistic, because what else do you have besides that? To keep going. Like, shit will happen every day in your life, and if you don't have that, like, yeah, it's just going to be a horrible living experience.
absolutely. And I think for women who are hearing this, a lot of the women want to talk because that's the way they cope, right? And they're like,
Yeah.
okay, why don't you talk to me? You just talk to me, and I'm here. I'm your confidant, and I would support you. I'm your partner. I'm your life partner. But I think the thing that you guys have to understand is that when men go to their cave, they just need that distance, and they're like, these rubber bands. Like the more they will pull away, when they come back, they'll come back stronger. But you got to give them that space. If you probe, I think they will get a lot more agitated because they're already going through a lot. They have a lot in their heads. And if you keep probing, they will also feel like you don't really trust them. That's what I at times go through. I feel like, okay, am I not being trusted? Like, why is this probing? What do you think, Ali, about this?
The first thing that comes into my mind is to understand the nature of a woman, that she is doing this because she got a caring nature, and she would love to make sure that she's taking well care of you, and she don't want to see you in a suffering mood. And again, let's face it, it is a form of suffering. It's maybe just a mental, spiritual, or emotional suffering. And she, because she see that, her caring nature will actually kick in, and she will be extra aware of what you're going through and making sure that she's really taking care of you. So once you understand that it's coming from a place of love, out of a sudden you will also respect it, and you will actually appreciate it, and will start smiling. I'm like, she actually cares about me. I think that's just to acknowledge that one, because sometimes, like, why is she nagging? Why is she after me? So I'm like, no, she's actually just taking very good care of you. But sometimes you really, in the situation, it might seem like that. But when you zoom out and you understand the bigger picture, she's just a loving, caring partner who want to make sure that you are taken care of. So that's the first one. Number two that actually comes into mind, things got to equality. But again, Women have their period, they need to have distance from a man. I'm like, fuck off. Honestly, getting into a cave is our period
Yes.
where we need to really extract ourselves. I'm like, fuck off. Give me my chocolate and leave me alone. But dude, seriously, we need that. It is something is happening on a not just a biological level, but I think a deeper level. And we need to, I think women also need to understand we need to have that time. But again, it is like jumping out in a black deep water, and like she just want to make sure you can dive and you can swim and you have the right equipment. And if you give her that security, she will actually leave you alone and she will let you enjoy the experience. So back to the whole point of, for God's sake, have a proper way of communicating. I'm like, I'm not distancing, because if you make a distance to your partner, automatically that will be, have I done something wrong? Is it me that is something wrong with? And of course, you were going to be asking, I'm like, please clarify. What she's asking for, as Neil already said, I'm like, clarify what the heck is happening in here. Is it me? Not me. She was like, not me. I think actually you can make a menu of saying, it's not you, it's a spiritual challenge. And then you can make a third thing, and then you can give her a checklist. And she'll be like, okay, see you in a week.
Mm.
I think that's the nature of woman. But again, really appreciate that she's even poking to you. That means she still loves you. Because if she didn't love you, she wouldn't even care about you, and she wouldn't even come and ask about all of those questions. Like, he can go and falafel himself.
Yeah, and also like Ali, like for women, they also suffer. Like when you see, a lot of the men are not aware. Like we have learned these things. We are still learning, and we will keep learning. But there are so many men who are just doing their 9 to 5, and they, when they come home, they're tired as fuck, and they just want to be quiet, watch their television, and eat their food, and not really talk to their wives or partners. Like that's what the reality is. And a lot of the women do feel that they are being abandoned. Maybe they have done something wrong, that's why the man is acting up. And there are such negative feelings and connotations around that. And for every woman who is hearing, like, if you can make your man aware about this cave situation or man having period, I think that would be great. But if they're not aware, then I think, if you're listening to this, you also need to understand that men are on their periods, and you have to give them a space. And that is the best way to deal with it, like, and trust that they will return. They will come back stronger with a lot more love, unless you have actually done something wrong. Like, as long as you're aware, I think all's good.
Neil, you were smiling all the way. I'm like, just cover it. Tell us what you're smiling of, and then we can leave this
No,
podcast.
no, I think it's a good analogy, like men having their period, because it may have a lot of overlap. Let's just leave it at that. But yeah, there's dark and there's light, right? So I think we went deep into the dark side. We touched on the light side because I think more or less, you know, all men would have that period of like going into it for work reason or working on a project, this kind of thing. And that's completely fine. I think women are more understanding of that as well when you're engaged. And I think it's not so bad because they understand, and I think they even admire it to an extent, like they like to poke and complain and stuff, but I think women enjoy seeing men engaged and working on a passion and something that really keeps them going. But yeah, I think we covered both.
Yeah, awesome, you guys. Thank you for watching. Whoever was listening or watching, thank you for your time. And if you have any questions for us, feel free to comment below. And yeah, with that being said,
See you
that's
on
the
the
end
next
of this
one.
podcast. Yeah, let's do it. Thank you, guys.